Welcome back, College Baseball Central and the weekend rotation fans. We're here after another fantastic Friday and week in college baseball. I'm joined today by Noah Darling and Jake McKeever. Noah, how are we doing today?
I'm good, Mark. It's good to have you back, kind of steering the ship here. You left the Village Idiots to run things last week, and it's good to have you back, Dad.
I thought you guys did a terrific job. I messaged as soon as I landed in San Francisco to let the fans who were worried about me. I was okay. I was just going to a Giants game with the fiance. So, Jake, how you doing?
Good. This kind of feels like a Tim Corbin kind of stream. We're buttoning up the pants, tightening the belt, cleaning it up a little bit.
Speaking of cleaning up, I threw on the Hawaiian shirt to bring back those vibes again from the old school shows here. Just kind of change the vibe here because it's been a little down here in college baseball for a lot of teams. But we're gonna pick it back up. Also, go over to our sponsors here, Home Field Apparel. They got tons of wonderful gear there. Use code CBC15, get 15% off your order. Go download the app. Go do it. Great stuff. Coming down to the end of college baseball season, go buy your stuff before your team makes a tournament here. Let's get into Friday night, boys. There are some big games here. Jake, I'm going to let you go first here because I want to talk about this Dallas Baptist taking 2 from UTSA and taking the series. This is big time, right? This might set Dallas Baptist up to host.
I was having the same thought as we were kind of sitting in a ninth inning rain delay at UTSA, is that it kind of feels like DBU, with all the way the Texas teams have been playing, that they're going to slot in and be the regional host, because they really took it to UTSA yesterday in both their games. They won them, they blew them out in the first game, and then UTSA kind of battled back in the second game, and DBU took it with a ninth inning home run late. And they were one of the better teams I think I've seen this year from a Texas standpoint, and they've consistently beat just about every team that they've played. So I think you have to feel really good as a DBU fan, not fans, about hosting. And I expect one of the Texas teams to go in there and just absolutely take over that regional.
Yeah, I think it's going to be good for Dallas Baptist. I think that they've played well lately, and that's kind of what the tournament committee likes to look at. How well have you played in the last 10? How well have you played in the last 20? Who have you beat? Well, taking 2 from a top 25 team in UTSA is a big win there. Noah, Florida just smokes Vandy 10-0. They really came out and showed that they were the better team last night. Not saying that they're the better team overall for the season, but that Florida team, they needed to get this game right?
Yeah, we know what Florida's weaknesses are, and it's the bullpen. And when you win 10-0, you usually don't have to rely on that bullpen too much. Big win for Florida. I think they're trying to lock in that top 8 spot. They're kind of in the lower half of that top 8 right now, and they want to just sneak ahead to the point where they can feel really good as we head down to the final few weeks here. And I think they really impressed last night when you run rule a team like Vandy.
Yeah, if they can take this series against Vandy, then they finish with Kentucky, correct? So that means that they've got some games ahead of them to win here. So we'll see what happens. But Florida beating Vandy last night 10-0 is big. Auburn embarrassing Ole Miss in 2. Jake, does this say more about Ole Miss this season, or the fact that Auburn has kind of emerged as a team that's going to be a tournament team?
I think it's a little bit of both, and it feels like Mississippi State and Ole Miss are just having mirror images where there's a little bit of hope there with Ole Miss dropping some close games. And then just down the stretch, they really haven't looked competitive. And I think I've learned a lot about Auburn. I mean, this is one of those ones where you really have to take care of business. And that's not something that Auburn's really had to do a ton this season because they've been down for so long. And I was really impressed how they really kind of came out and played their brand of baseball and didn't play down to the competition at Ole Miss.
Yeah, they showed up and they just started hitting like they have been all year here down the stretch, and it's big for Auburn. I think it's almost bigger for Auburn than it was for Ole Miss playing their way basically out of the SEC tournament and being just a back burner nothing team this year. I don't know if that makes the seat hot down there for Bianco, but I got to tell you, they do not look competitive. And had they not won a World Series last year, I think he'd be in the talks of being gone right now. Clemson beating Vautech, just really great start there for a minute for Vautech, Noah, and then Clemson just decided, nope, we're going to pour it on. We are a top 16 team.
As someone who has a little bit invested in Clemson this year, I was a little worried when Virginia Tech kind of pulled away. We're seeing it with Duke right now, as I'm sure we'll talk about them later, where they're collapsing a little bit, and I want to see Clemson kind of overcome that wave and really drive into that regional conversation, because I think that we want to see Clemson hosting. Those white pants at home just look a little better than they do on the road. Big win for Clemson. I really like this team and how they're coming together. Caden Grice, one of the bigger X factors in the country.
Yeah, he's been terrific here down the stretch. This Clemson team has really gelled, and are firing on all cylinders. I mean, it's a good scene down there in South Carolina when you're talking about a Clemson team that's going the right direction when South Carolina's kind of going the opposite direction right now. So Clemson fans have got to be ecstatic. They're playing their way right now into a top 16 host. Texas Tech defeats West Virginia. Big for Texas Tech. Not so great for West Virginia there, Jake. They play Texas Tech 2 more times, and then they got Texas to end it here. What are their chances of hanging on to this Big 12 title?
I don't know. I really didn't know how to feel because going into this game, it kind of seemed like it was almost going to be too easy for West Virginia. They get to play Texas Tech on the road. Texas Tech has kind of been slipping a little bit, not really where they need to be. And then they just come out, and more so that the Big 12 is just a weird conference. They really didn't look that competitive in that game against Texas Tech. And just to kind of change the gears a little bit, I think that this kind of moves ECU back into that conversation a little bit with West Virginia kind of dropping this one. And they're really going to have to go out and sweep these next two to kind of hang on to that host. Because I think if Tech takes 2 of 3 from them, that's going to look really bad as a blemish on West Virginia's resume.
Yeah, and, like I said, Kansas State's only 1 game back now in that Big 12. We'll talk more about some other Big 12 teams here coming up. But Virginia's smoking Louisville. Noah, Louisville right now, if the ACC tournament was to be played today, is out of the ACC tournament. There's a chance they don't make the tournament here, and some people had them as high as number 1 in our poll.
Yes, I do recall Jay giving them those first place votes earlier in the year. Louisville is just such a weird team, but so is Virginia. This series was one where one team had to win. A lot of times when we're talking Virginia, hey, one of these teams has to lose, unfortunately. We didn't know who's going to win this one, and Virginia just dominated them. Looked really, really ugly for Louisville. Weird team in a weird conference. The last 2 games of the series are going to be really telling for especially Louisville, but really both teams at this point. Virginia is trying to maybe get back into that hosting conversation if they aren't right now. And Louisville, like you said, is on the outside looking in, not just the NCAA tournament, but the ACC tournament. And that's just not something that those first-place voters saw in February, March.
I don't think anybody really did. I mean, I know we like to give Jake a hard time about it, but we all thought that Louisville was a top 10 team at that point in March.
And they really don't have any holes. That's kind of the weird part about it is if you kind of look up and down this roster, they really shouldn't be as bad as they are. They're just like anti-Arkansas where they just lose.
Yeah, once they lost that series to Miami, it's been kind of a downward trend for this Louisville team, and they really haven't recovered. But that Miami team is going the other direction. Speaking of, Miami beating Pitt. Not a big deal there, but Miami continues to roll here in the ACC. They look like they're going to win that Coastal Division, right, Jake?
Yeah, and Pitt's kind of a really gritty team, or Gritsburg, as they like to be called. And there's been a few teams that have kind of gone out and lost to Pitt and then taken the next 2 of 3. So to really kind of take care of business and sweep is a really big deal for Miami. And I think that you really kind of have to think of them as the best team in the ACC, as the most consistent with especially the way Wake's kind of handled some of these bad teams. That's really kind of the thing that stood out to me is Miami has just been consistent throughout the year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to put them up there above Wake with saying that they're the better team than Wake, but
consistent, not better, consistent.
I still think Wake's the most consistent team in the ACC. But I will say Miami has played the best probably the last 4 weeks, and that's a good thing coming tournament time. Last year they were rolling at this time also, though, and then they ended up getting beat at home. So
they had the Hurricane game, which is ironic because they are Hurricanes.
We'll see what happens here moving forward. Arkansas beating South Carolina 4-1, Noah. Arkansas seems like they're getting healthy at the right time. South Carolina's got some pieces coming back, but they were missing a ton of pitching.
Yeah, South Carolina's kind of battling that injury bug right now, but Arkansas, like you just said, getting over it, and you see those pieces, they're coming back. They look like a more complete team. I think the development of Gage Wood has been ginormous for Arkansas. It's almost like a diet Kevin Kopps, and a lot of Arkansas fans will say that Dave Van Horn has the tendency to overuse those kind of bullpen arms, and he's come on kind of late, so he may not have the ability to overuse them. So I think Arkansas kind of has the magic brew cooking right now where Jake's been saying it for a few weeks almost to jinx them, where they feel like the only lock for Omaha, which is just the ultimate troll for not only Arkansas but every team. But right now I'm feeling really good about this Arkansas team. Again, they don't have all this talent. You don't look at the lineup and say, yeah, this guy is for sure going to get a hit or this guy is for sure going to go yard today. But they just do all the things correctly. And right now we're looking at these teams, we're trying to find holes, and Arkansas doesn't necessarily have them when they're healthy.
Yeah, as far as a national spotlight, you talk about Dave Van Horn's kind of put together a quiet Arkansas team who's just taking care of business. They are really good at home, and it's appearing that everything is going to go through Fayetteville here when you're talking about tournament time. That's really big for Arkansas. They continue to win these games here. If they can beat South Carolina here this weekend, it's basically a lock that they're a national seed, right? They're going to be locked in here. And moving forward, that's huge for their season.
They are leading the SEC currently, by the way. They're
currently leading the SEC.
LSU, yeah.
Yep. And they're tied with Vandy, right? So they're split with Vandy right now. So, but yeah, that's impressive. What they have done this season with all the injuries and just continuing to battle and win games has been huge for them. But right now, when you're talking about the tournament having to go through Fayetteville, that's tough. That's tough to go down there and win ball games. So good for Arkansas. They're taking care of business. Good to see them. I know the fans are going to be super happy about that one there. Coastal wins in extras over South Alabama. Jake, is Coastal kind of skidding here and they're kind of just trying to hold on to what they've got?
I think that this kind of more speaks to the depth of the Sun Belt Conference and less about Coastal sliding. I think that they kind of are starting to see, and this is going to be a crazy, outrageous assessment, but it's almost like an SEC grind, which is how consistent these teams feel. And I think that Coastal is kind of feeling that grind a little bit because they've just been playing so many tough teams this past couple month and a half. Definitely not on the scale as an SEC one, but they've just been rolling through Sunbelt teams that I think are above average. And when I think it's even almost deeper than the Big 12 this year.
I would say that Sun Belt is probably in that 3 to 4 range as far as conference this year. I don't love a lot of conferences this year, and they're definitely above the Big 10, which we'll get to here in a little bit. But this conference is tough, so winning games matters. But how you win them, if you're Coastal, if you're trying to be a national seed, matters also. And taking that many innings to beat South Alabama is not a great look when you're trying to host. But a win's still a win, still gets you go in the right direction.
And I will say this, the good thing about the Sun Belt is Texas State is kind of played up. So that's kind of boosting up Coastal's RPI kind of on the back end. So even though they're winning, Texas State, I think, is doing more to kind of Coastal up because Coastal dominated Texas State earlier in the year.
Yep. Yeah, agreed. It's helping them. The Texas State is coming back alive. But speaking of another team who had to win in extras over a conference rival, UConn beats Butler in 13 innings. Noah, you know how much I don't like UConn. I don't think they should be a top 25 team. This one just kind of icing on the cake for me. Yes, they won, but they're taking 13 innings to beat a Butler.
A win is a win is a win is a win. As I was telling Jake last week, if this was an LSU team, we'd be talking about their grit and, oh, look at how much they had to overcome to win this game. And they didn't play their best game and they still won. No matter the opponent, that's impressive. And yet with UConn, we hold them to this high standard just because they're in the Big East. 1 week from now, I'll be watching UConn play against the lovely Creighton Blue Jays. I'm going to wear my quarter zip. It's going to be great. I'm going to be able to sit wherever I want because nobody attends those games. And I'm going to be able to see UConn up close and personal before I lock them in as a possible regional host. And you guys are going to lose your minds. This is a hot UConn team, and it doesn't matter who they're playing or how they beat them, they win.
I'm going to Venmo somebody to hold a sign up that says Mark hates dogs. I'm just not into the UConn. I'm just not going to do it. I'm not going to buy into it. I don't think they're a top 25 team. They definitely should not host. They're probably going to get a host, which is going to be sad because somebody's going to go in there and roll. But this is what's going to happen.
It's going to be Texas.
Yeah, it's going to be an easy walk through there in UConn. As much as UConn fans really already don't like me, I'm going to pile on. UConn's not good at baseball. Northern teams are not good at baseball. The only Northern team ever good at baseball is Oregon State. Moving forward, Campbell beating Gardner-Webb. Now, this was not a good win either. Campbell held on, but this is not a good one either, right, Jake? I mean, they won, but it's not great.
Noah, say it with me. Gritty team win from the Campbell Camels.
Give me a break.
I think that the Campbell's kind of problem with this right now is they almost need to be they're looking ahead because ultimately these games kind of don't matter because I've kind of gone back and forth on the fence about how if Campbell makes it if they don't win their conference tournament, and I think their conference tournament is so bad that they almost have to win it. So I think that they really kind of more set up their pitching staff for this conference tournament to kind of get in and worry less about these games down the stretch. So I think that that's kind of where some of their scores we'll see is kind of in that aspect of it.
I disagree. I think they're still playing for a seed. I think that they're trying to win every game that they can because to the voters and to the people that seed this tournament, the national committee, they want to see Campbell win. And Campbell's winning games, but they're not winning them convincingly. Now, I want to see more from Campbell. I love this Campbell team. I've had them ranked very high all season. I think that they continue to roll here, but they got to win out the rest of their conference games here and win the conference tournament, and then they put themselves in the talk for being a national seed. East Carolina, wins 10-4 over Memphis. They seem to be rolling now, Noah. I know that Jake does not like this East Carolina team. I do like East Carolina. I do want to see them in Omaha. Noah, East Carolina winning 10-4 over Memphis. Is this just East Carolina finally getting to the rolling of the train here?
I'm going to completely disregard your question mark and just say that you lumping those two comments together where you say that Jake doesn't like ECU, but you want ECU in Omaha. It's possible to be both, like me. I don't like this ECU team. I don't think they're very good, but I would give everything for them to play in Omaha. I want them here desperately, but I just don't see this team as I think they're a tournament team now. A week ago, I would have said that they weren't a tournament team, even though it really wasn't in discussion. I think they're in the tournament, but I don't think they're anywhere near hosting. And I think that the debate is whether they're a 2 or a 3 right now. And if they even lose one of these series, I'm okay with them being a 3 seed because I don't see it with this team. But again, I really, really want to. I hope they win out. I hope they never lose a game again. But I don't see it with this team right now. Now, I don't even remember what your question was. I did intend to answer it, but the answer is no, they're not back.
Listen, I think ECU is a better team than UConn, but we'll get into this some later here because
I hope they go to regional together.
Wait, hold on. I want kudos for my prediction that I made 2 weeks ago. That ECU was going to beat all these crappy teams, and their fans were going to go crazy saying they're back, when really they're just beating crappy teams.
Now, hold on, Jake. You can't take credit for that because you're saying that it doesn't mean anything when they do beat the teams. So you can't conversely also say, "Look at me, I was right." You can't win that one.
That's like saying credit to me, USA won a war in 1776. Like, no, you can't just go back and say these things. Like, that doesn't matter.
I got accused of reusing memes by ECU fans because they kept tweeting the same meme.
Indiana beating Purdue 26-11. Jake, I know that a lot of people on the outskirts of media don't really care about this one, but that ties them back up with Maryland after the loss, which we'll talk about next with Noah. Indiana wins 26-11. Does this matter to Purdue?
I thought that was a little bit strange because anytime you put up 26 runs on a Friday night is definitely eye-opening. And that Maryland team, I think that they're almost kind of in that ECU range where even if they don't win their conference, I think that they get in. But, I mean, I was really impressed with them. I mean, I watched the highlights end up being like a 30-minute highlight because they kept just banging the ball out of the yard. And then Maryland dropping the one to Minnesota. I mean, that one really had me scratching my head. I think Minnesota, and Noah can agree because you got to see them in person, they were like a D2 team with how bad that they were at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, Minnesota has been historically bad this year, and then beating Maryland here. Noah, Maryland loses 10-7, another Friday night loss for Maryland. The pieces are just not fitting together, and like we talked about earlier, they're in the mid-50s in RPI now. Do they have to win the conference tournament here to get the bid? Is it going to be a one-bid league?
I think it's going to be very similar to Rutgers last year where they don't necessarily have to win it, but they're going to be one of those bubble teams that if enough things go wrong, then maybe they could be on the outside looking in because the non-conference, they were a little bit of a disappointment. Then they seem to get things under control. They still haven't lost a Big Ten series in like 3 years, so I'm sure they'll stumble and recover just fine here, but it's a little weird with this Big Ten conference because I'm looking at the Big Ten field for the tournament. I'm kind of sinking my teeth in, thinking there are going to be a couple teams that I want to watch, but at the same time, are any of these tournament teams? I don't know.
I know the bracket now has really shrunk up, and there's a lot of teams there piled at the top that could win this tournament. They're going to be in because the winner of the tournament automatically in. I think that Maryland is the only team we're talking outside of those teams that's going to be a possibility of being in. Indiana has played their way to being very close to being a bubble team. I think that they need to win out the rest of their games here. But this makes a big difference for Big Ten baseball. We're going to see what happens here with a lot of these.
And then Iowa and Nebraska, too, I think are kind of in that mix.
Yep, they're in that
top last tier. 2 weeks ago. I think that those are going to be on bid stealer watch, definitely.
At the beginning of the season, I had my eyes all over that Iowa team, and I really don't know what happened to them. They obviously beat LSU, but they have the pieces. They have some really good talent there, and Brody Brecht is worth the price of admission on his own part. And then Nebraska has two of the best players in the conference, and Bryce Matthews and Max Anderson. I don't get it. I don't get this Big Ten at all, but Maryland just does not lose series. So until they do, they'll be okay. But
Did Keaton Anthony play for Iowa?
No,
he's still out.
He was in the dugout, though.
He was in the dugout?
Moving to the next one here that was a big deal here with two top 25 teams. Two teams that are really actually still vying for a host slot. Tennessee beating Kentucky 10-6. Jake, This is a big win for Tennessee. Does this knock Kentucky down a little bit?
You know what, Mark? I'm going to go ahead and take my victory lap from the Spaces on Monday when everybody was just ranting and raving about this Kentucky team. And I kind of stood up on Tennessee's behalf and said that this is a Tennessee team that I think still has all the talent to host. And despite everything, I think they are going to win these 2 games. And I came away, I think, a little bit unimpressed with Kentucky. They really kind of played uninspired ball at the beginning and almost looked a little bit intimidated against a Tennessee team at home. And I mean, Tennessee and South Carolina, I think, are the 2 most night and day teams on home and road splits. And I don't think you beat Tennessee at Lindsey Nelson, which is very dangerous as they kind of start to host here.
Yeah, let it be known also that I did take Tennessee to sweep this series. So I was like, hey, I'm taking Tennessee to sweep this series against Kentucky. I'm with you. I was less impressed by Kentucky this weekend. That's a tough one there to lose on Friday. Now, granted, Tennessee has great pitching. You're just not going to hit the ball that much. Tennessee is 29-4 at home. Beating them at home is going to be very tough for Kentucky to take the next 2. And we'll talk more about them and their seeding and what they're going to be looking like. But Tennessee has put themselves back into the possibility of hosting. And we talked about it. They're so much better at home than they are on the road that if them hosting a regional, that's a big deal for Tennessee to probably try to get back into a super regional here. UNC beating North Carolina State, taking the first 2 of the series and taking the series now. Noah, North Carolina finally playing a little bit better ball. NC State maybe playing their way out of the tournament.
Yeah, I don't think NC State was ever really that deep into the conversation. They've always kind of been on that bubble. And anytime you lose a series like this to another potential bubble team, that's only going to hurt you. And especially when that starts on Thursday and it turns into Friday and you've already lost the series, that really hurts it for them. All-time uniform matchup, though. There's nothing better than when the sweaters come off in Chapel Hill and you get those blue skies, that green grass, and that Carolina blue and white. And then you can throw any uniform on the field and they look good. But NC State is pretty good in their own right, too, as long as they're not wearing those Tommy White red pajamas.
Well,
No,
those are
are
not
you just
breaking out the red and
confused
whites.
that they were, that's not Creighton blue, right? It's a little bit different shade.
Yeah, I know, because no quarter zips, just the regular sweaters.
Full hoodies here. Yeah, it's big for North Carolina. Matt Horvath also very good down there. If you have not seen him play, I know that his teammate gets a lot of the credit there, but Honeycutt gets a lot of the credit. Matt Horvath, very good. Good to see UNC beating North Carolina State. Southern Miss beating UL Monroe. Good for Southern Miss. They've been on a big roll here, Jake. Is this a mid-major team to look out for?
Yeah, I think that the way that they have kind of played and some of the other teams that are playing up around them as well, they're really kind of helping their chances. But I mean, it's Monroe. I think Monroe is probably a bottom 20 team in RPI. So I mean, they should go out and take care of business, which, as we've seen with Baylor and Pitt, is easier said than done. So kind of kudos to Southern Miss there taking care of business.
Yeah, you still got to go out and win the games there. And as much as I hate on UConn for going out and beating their opponents, I'm going to give credit here to Southern Miss because they keep this winning streak going. Southern Miss has been playing very good ball lately. I do think that it's a little bit sketchy outside at Tanner Hall, though. I don't know if they have enough starting pitching to be a real regional threat, but they're going to get there now. Wake run rules Florida State here, Noah. Wake just seems to turn on the Jets here and just bury a Florida State team that's going to miss the tournament for the first time in 47 years, right?
Yeah, I think Wake Forest is kind of separating themselves as the true number 1. We saw LSU sometimes struggle with teams like this. We saw them struggle a little bit with Alabama, struggle a little bit with Kentucky. You don't see Wake Forest struggling with teams of that nature. Obviously, Florida State is just not a tournament team right now, but it's nice to see a team like that just pound a team that is a conference foe. They should know each other pretty well, but it's just not even close. And Rhett Lauder is just dominant.
Yeah, this Wake team really just put it all together, and I'm very impressed with how they're playing lately. They seem like they're going to hold on to that number 1 seed. LSU could take it if they end up winning the SEC tournament, but these are 2 very good schools that we're talking about for 1-2. No really disappointments there, but big win for Wake. Another big win for another team here in the Big 12. Jake, Kansas State beats Oklahoma State, and I put back on my disappointed dad face in this Oklahoma State team. Kansas State is just taking care of business, though, and they're beating the better teams.
Yeah, that's what's kind of weird is it doesn't even feel like an upset anymore. It just kind of feels like what we expected to happen. But I did kind of feel the same way you, Mark, as a disappointed dad, where just when we had thought Oklahoma State had kind of figured it out, they just go out and lay an absolute egg against Kansas State, which I know that I think that they're a game out in the Big 12 too. So they really are kind of set up to be the number 1 seed in the Big 12. And I think if they're the number 1 seed, they have to be in the tournament despite their non-conference slate and how down the Big 12 is. If they win the Big 12 conference tournament, I think that they're going to be in the tournament itself, which again, for a lot of these bubble teams is bad news. That's what's so weird. Is them as a 2 seed in the Big 12 is a lot different than them as a 1 seed.
Yeah, and with West Virginia finishing with Texas Tech, 2 more against Texas Tech, and 1 series against Texas, Kansas State could play their way into the number 1 seed. And if they win the regular season title, it's going to be hard to say they're not a tournament team. And you look at their resume and you look at their winning percentage in their games, they probably should be a tournament team over a lot of these Big 12 teams. They're better than a TCU right now, if you ask me. So if I'm bidding on who's going to make it in TCU or Kansas State, I'm taking K-State right now. Good to see them win. Glad that that's still happening down there for K-State. I'm still disappointed in Oklahoma State. They could have been 1 game out of the Big 12 regular season title. Instead, they lose this one and they stay back. LSU rolls Mississippi State. Noah, this was not really in question, but it finishes off with a 2-run Tommy White home run. Is this LSU kind of getting healthy at the right time here? We knew that they were playing their last 4 series. They're not great teams, but they kind of are all over the board. LSU trying to get back that number 1 seed.
Well, the truth with LSU lies in days not named Friday when Paul Skeens, and spell it with me, Jake, Skenes, is throwing on Friday.
No, you have to add 2 Ks because he strikes out so many people.
Maybe just 1 K or 4 total, not 3.
Not 3.
But, yeah, when LSU doesn't have him, that's when we learn the most about LSU. And as dominant as he is, that's only going to get you 1 game. I want to see him do it again tomorrow. But, of course, that's not impossible to do against Mississippi State. And that Tommy White home run to walk it off was pretty cool because I tweeted last night that the only silver lining with all the pace of play stuff where we have games ending in 7 or 8 innings now is that we get to see these walk-offs in the middle of the game where the crowd actually does erupt even though they're up by 10-plus runs.
Yeah, we got to come up with a new name for these walk-off home runs when you're 10 running teams, but we'll come up with something. But it is fun to see the excitement in the fans and everything going down there. But LSU rolls. A&M beats Bama. Jake, I think this is big for A&M. I think that A&M's kind of moving the needle for themselves here lately.
Yeah, this one definitely felt like a tournament game as a bubble standpoint to see who kind of wins this series, kind of goes in and wins it. A&M has Mississippi State, obviously, to finish the year, so they'll probably get some wins there. But, I mean, this was a tremendous hitting standpoint from A&M. They had 5 home runs. Alabama had 2. And A&M is kind of talked about it should be talked about as an underrated crackerjack kind of ballpark when the wind gets blowing out. I mean, they had 5 or 6 home runs last night, and their home run numbers have really kind of shot up in the last month at that stadium.
Yep, it's big for A&M tournament-wise. Keep moving forward. They look like they're going to be playing the way in the 2 seed somewhere, maybe Dallas Baptist.
That would be exciting. That would
be a lot of fun, I think. I think that it's a very good tournament possibility. USC beating Arizona State last night, Noah. This Arizona State team held to 1 run. Blake Soderson from USC goes 7 innings, a 3-hit, 1-run ball versus a Arizona State team that's been crushing the ball. Is this big for USC to kind of right the ship and maybe put their way back into the tournament?
It's huge for USC to just win games at this point because they want to get on the right side of that bubble. And I know that we kind of have that deal going on where I'm at 7, you're at 6, and Jake's at 5. Who's going to get the right amount of teams in the Pac-12 into the NCAA tournament? And right now, USC winning that game helps me. We don't want Arizona State to fall too far. I hope USC takes 2 of 3 and gets out of there and keeps Arizona State still in a good spot. And Washington, keep it up.
Yeah, we'll talk about them here in a second. Stanford holding off Arizona, Jake. Stanford just kind of is the class right now, the Pac-12, and they seem to be winning that Pac-12 title. Now, it's still not impossible for Washington or Arizona State to catch them, but it's a 4-game lead now, and it's pretty much a foregone conclusion that Stanford's going to hold off, right?
Yeah, and we talked about other teams across the country about, controlling the game and kind of dominating it. But Stanford really doesn't have that problem. All they really need to do is win because no one ever watches these games anyway. So, I mean, you just do a quick glance. You're like, yep, Stanford won by 1. Don't even need to know that it was a walk-off. As long as Stanford's winning, that's all you really need to know.
Yeah, they're going to be a national seed at this point. I mean, I don't think there's any way that they drop out of a national seed unless they somehow lose the next 5 and don't win the Pac-12 tournament. Or don't win the Pac-12 title. They don't really have to win the Pac-12 tournament to be a national seed at this point. So, one that took a hit though, Oregon State getting smoked by UCLA last night. Noah, this was a bad loss for Oregon State the way that UCLA has been playing. Probably a big win for UCLA, though, to try to right their ship.
Yep, another big one for my 7 discussion. UCLA kind of jumping back into the discussion. I think that they are a team that was helped a lot by their name, and then as soon as people stopped buying into the UCLA name and logo, they fell off quickly. Get them back in there, and it looks like they know how to hit the ball now. All it took was Oregon State to go down there and throw them some BP. We'll see if it's good enough to take the series, but last night was just an explosion of runs, so good for them. Bad for your Beavers, Mark.
Yeah, they finally started scoring runs, and Oregon State just didn't really look like the team. They kind of battled back. It was 5-6, and then 6th spot by UCLA there in the 7th, and it was that was all she wrote there.
I think you're fine, Mark. That game kind of felt like an anomaly for both teams. So I think that your Beavers will be fine, and then you'll be fine with your Pac-12 bet with UCLA being left out as well.
Yeah, we're going to talk about another one here in Washington rolling Oregon. That put Washington back up to number 2 in the Pac-12 right now. Washington crushed Oregon last night. That was a big one there. That it made me scared, because I'm like looking at it going, they might get 7 teams in now if these teams keep winning. Washington rolling Oregon, though, that's big for Washington and bad for Oregon, right, Jake?
Yeah, I came away really impressed with Oregon. I mean, not Oregon, Washington this game. It's actually one of the few Pac-12 games I got a chance to watch because it started so late. And Washington really impressed me. I'm not saying that they're as good as the Omaha team that they had, but I mean, they banged the ball around the yard pretty good. And that was kind of impressive to see as someone who's kind of flown under the radar this entire year. It seems like they're just going to kind of sneak in like OU did last year and kind of get rolling here. I definitely don't put words in my mouth, know that I think that they're going to get to Omaha, but this Washington team came away really impressive for me.
Well, Jake, either way, you're going to take credit for it.
I won't have to. They're not making it.
I do think that this Washington team is playing their best ball here lately. They are hitting the ball. That is something that they were lacking at the beginning of the season. Middle of the season, they kind of picked it up a little bit here, and then late now they're really rolling on hitting. So it's good to see Pac-12 is playing good baseball. It's good to finally got above 50 degrees out here, so we can finally start hitting the ball around the yard. And then the last one we're going to talk about here, Noah, just for you, is Georgia Tech beating Duke. Duke just really laid an egg here against the Georgia Tech team that's very not good, we'll say.
Yeah, Duke and South Carolina are kind of having similar slides right now where we really don't know what's going on. They've kind of just lost the magic. Of course, South Carolina's kind of earned that position where they're talking about a top 8 seed, and Duke's just kind of hoping to host. I don't know what's going on with this Duke team. You can't lose games like that. Georgia Tech is not a good team. Very, very puzzling. It seems like Clemson and Duke just kind of switched spots recently.
I think that Clemson is playing their way into a host and Duke is playing their way out of a host. That's the way I look at it right now. So that's everything that happened over the week so far. Let's talk about something cool. No, I'm going to let you start. Give us something cool that happened this week.
Yeah, normally I like to go like player specific, but I'm just going to say that Tennessee hitting 5 home runs on 11 hits against Kentucky is very, very cool. Number one, because it's a good stat to kind of throw around. Yeah, we hit a lot of tanks, but number two, because I think Kentucky is a fraudulent baseball team, and I love to see them lose games, and I love to see Tennessee kind of have their swagger at home. I want a Tennessee regional. Probably way too much to ask for a top 8 seed for them, but take me as far as they can because I love when people get upset with this Tennessee baseball team.
I don't know if they can get to a top 8. If they win the next 5 games, they have 18 wins, which would put them in the position to be a top 8 seed. But I think they'd still have to do some damage in the SEC tournament. But this team will more than likely host now a regional, which is good for college baseball, and I'm excited for it. So I love that. 5 home runs at home against Kentucky. Good big one there. Jake, something cool.
So, I did my research last night expecting it to happen, and they ended up going out and losing. So we're going to talk about how Fullerton is looking to be the first team that actually clinches a bid. They are up 3 games with 5 to go, so they have a chance to clinch if things kind of fall their way. Long Beach State plays Barbara. They play UC San Diego. So Fullerton might be the first team as a true lock to be into the tournament as they would clinch their bid. So that's something cool.
Okay. First locked-in bid could be Cal State Fullerton. My something cool was a player that I picked in our Pac-12 preview show, Will Simpson, hitting 2 monstrous home runs at Oregon last night. He also takes over as the league leader in home runs in the Pac-12 with 17. good to see him go out there, and he just has really been the catalyst for this Washington team now that seems to be rolling offensively. So big game for Will Simpson. Congratulations, 2 home runs last night at Oregon. Good to see you there. All right, let's get into the pick'em. How we doing today, fellas? Last week was a little rough for some people. Some people did good.
I have no memory of last week. I don't know.
Oh man, there was some good ones here. Nobody takes NC State. AJ or Alex, neither one of them took them. Everybody kind of rolled with UNC here, and guess what? We were all kind of right. So, Jake, go ahead and start us off. UNC.
We won't dwell on victories because they happen so frequently on my side of town, but I still kind of like NC to kind of figure it out despite how they've been playing. And I mean, it eventually it has to come through. They just have so much talent. They have to kind of stop underperforming. And, taking that first game on Thursday in a dramatic fashion and not riding too high and taking the second game, I think goes a long way for them as they try and get back into the tournament. I did find it a little strange that they extended their coach after like a bubble type season. That was kind of strange to me.
Hey, you got to keep him when you got him. Okay, that's the thing. If you see what you want and you got a guy that runs a program and doesn't do any of the wrong things, you look across the baseball nation and there's so many coaches not doing the right things. If you got a guy that's doing the right things, recruiting and still winning games, bring him in. Noah, UNC?
Yeah, this is just a team, like I said earlier, they play better when the sweaters come off, and they look good doing it. Matt Horvath is having a tremendous season, and NC State is just not a tournament team in my eyes, so this is a pretty easy pick. I hope North Carolina kind of sneaks into our top 25 this week because we had them at like 26. But I don't think they're quite that good yet, but I think they're definitely safely in the tournament right now, more so than a lot of ACC teams.
No, I'm just dying at their logo literally has a sweater on it.
Yeah, he's got the sweater on. That Ramsey the Ram. I do love this UNC team. I think if they can get some pitching going down the season here late, they have enough offense to really make things happen. I think that this series kind of puts NC State out of the tournament again. I know they've been a bubble team for many years now, and they just keep getting on the wrong side of this coin. But I feel like UNC kind of just, put the final nail in their coffin this season, and North Carolina State is going to have to do something big in the ACC tournament if they get in here. All right, Florida and Vanderbilt. Jake, you took Vandy. Go ahead. We'll let you go first here. Let us know why this Vandy pick.
I thought that Vandy would come out with a little bit more firepower just because it seems like every time people kind of write Vandy off, they just go out and have an absolute bullpen game that shoves like we saw in Arlington and then in a few other series. But, I mean, I came away really impressed with Florida. They quickly kind of flushed that balk at A&M, which is something that could have kind of lingered in them. So really impressed with how Florida kind of flushed that bad game and took care of business here.
Home teams in the SEC seem to perform better, especially when their backs are against the wall, and Florida really kind of needed this one. Noah, you picked Florida here pretty easily, right?
Yeah, I was actually expecting a little bit more support for Vanderbilt, the upside-down khaki pants, but a pretty easy pick for me. I just think that Florida is a little bit more talented offensively, just a little bit, and then the starting pitching is probably just a slight edge to Florida, but then obviously the bullpen is a total wild card with really both of these teams. But Vandy's kind of developed one. I see this as a 2-3 Gators win, and being at home really helps.
Yeah, being at home, and they have I would say that Florida has the better starting staff. They definitely do not have the better bullpen. So not getting deep into that bullpen last night was huge for Florida moving forward in this weekend. I think Florida ends up rolling here. I think that they get 2 or 3. I do think Vandy takes one game just because that Florida bullpen is just not up to par in the SEC. So
they did win the first one last week at A&M and then dropped the next 2 now. So
that's what I'm going with. All right. Well, here's another one. Noah and Jake. Which one of you would like to speak first about your Louisville Cardinal? Noah, I'm going to go to you first because I know
Please,
Jake's got lots to say here. So I'm going to go to Noah first.
I really don't want to parrot anything Jake says because that's the ramblings of the lunatic. So thank you for going to me first. I picked Louisville just because Virginia's on such a tremendous slide right now, and Louisville looked really good against Vandy in the midweek. I thought maybe they have a little bit of their momentum back. They played an emotional game and came up just short. Maybe that would rally the troops a little bit. And then they, I guess, forgot to fly to the field yesterday, and the managers played. Hopefully they can salvage these last two, but my God, it was not a good start to this series for the Cardinal, who are now, as we said earlier, on the outside looking in of both tournaments that they should be safely in.
Yeah, they're playing their way out of the ACC tournament, which is going to play their way out of the NCAA tournament. Jake, Louisville,
Um,
what
so
happened?
I had been sitting on a soapbox for probably the last 6 weeks saying Louisville's been injured, Louisville's been injured. Like, wait till they get healthy, they'll figure it out. And then they get healthy and they look worse. Like they lose by 10 against a Virginia team that has really kind of been going the wrong direction. And I think that I'm officially off the Louisville bandwagon and going to ride with Monty on Virginia from here on out in terms of just overachieving ACC teams. And I think we need to talk more about how Louisville's about to miss the tournament for the second time in 3 years since their kind of Omaha visit in 2019. They're kind of quietly playing back to, I think, where we have always seen Louisville baseball in
Jake,
a kind of.
from 2010 to 2019, Louisville led the country in wins.
No. I am saying 90s Louisville was nothing, and they're kind of getting like they are about to have had 3 catchers get drafted, and they've missed the tournament 2 out of 3 years. Like,
Weren't
that
you
is just
born in the 90s?
yeah.
So
Early
I don't know
90s.
anything about 90s Louisville.
You were not born in the
baseball.
early 90s either, Jake. I believe you were the same
I'm
age.
46. I've just aged very gracefully.
Well, surprise, surprise. Alex joined AJ and I in the winning ways of just continuing to pick winners. Yeah, this felt like the get right series for Virginia. Geloff hits a home run last night. This team is very good. Geloff and Teal are two of the best back-to-back hitters in the country, and they're in Virginia right now. I think that this team can get rolling again. There's an outside chance Virginia can play their way back into a 16 seed, but we'll see what happens here. They've got to play a little bit better down the stretch here. Winning this first one huge against Louisville, who a lot of people picked as a very high tournament team this year. It's good to see that win there for Virginia, but moving forward, Virginia's got to do a little bit more work. Good work, boys, on the first one, though. West Virginia and Texas Tech. Boy, you guys are having a hard time here on Friday.
I blame this one on Noah.
I blame it
Noah
on
has been
you.
like,
That's Rich.
oh, go get on the right side of West Virginia. You don't want to be wrong.
Jake, go ahead and start us off with your West Virginia pick here against Texas Tech.
See,
They're at
I don't
home
know
against Texas Tech too, by the way.
this one felt very easy because, again, we've had Noah in our ear chirping about don't be late on West Virginia. Don't be late. Texas Tech so bad on the road. Don't look. And then other than the Big 12 is weird, I think that that's just what happened here. And I think I learned a valuable lesson that I shouldn't ride with Noah on obscure Big 12 teams.
Isn't every Big 12 team an obscure Big 12 team this year? I wouldn't say any of them are well known or not right in our faces this year. But yeah, it's kind of a tough one to pick here. You think West Virginia at home is going to roll, especially the way they played lately. Noah, you took West Virginia. Explain yourself.
Well, I'm always going to take West Virginia. You could put West Virginia up against LSU. I would take West Virginia. The problem is that Jake has jumped on. The problem is that Jake jumps on these teams to try and intentionally, almost like kamikaze my pick here. It's disgusting. He knew where I was going to go the whole way. Jake is from Texas. You're supposed to take the Texas teams. Stick to your own teams here. Texas Tech can't win on the road. That's fine. I'm still confident that we are going to take the series if Jake publicly right now rescinds his West Virginia pick.
He renounces his West Virginia pick. I'm not allowing any flip-flopping on this show, let me tell you. Alex joined y'all, though. He thought that you guys were picking the right direction. Surprise, surprise, the guys who are 1-2 in the pick'em so far. AJ and I took Texas Tech to win this series. Listen, I'm not going to speak for AJ, but I believe that he would be in the same boat as me, thinking that this is a time for Texas Tech to kind of right their season. Going down and beating West Virginia there. Is it in Morgantown? Is that where West Virginia plays now?
Wait, Mark, I have a question. How many other cities in West Virginia could you name? Because I think Morgantown's about the only one that I could name.
Moving forward, I'm on the opposite side of the country, guys. I have no idea. I'm literally 3,000 miles away from Morgantown. I think it's 2,860 or something. But yeah, Texas Tech here, this is big for them. That offense is going to get going. Even though they only won 5-2, I think that West Virginia just doesn't quite have enough of the weaponry to catch up with Texas Tech. After losing the Friday night game, I don't see West Virginia taking 2 of the next 3 or 2 of the next 2. So Texas Tech. Jake, you
It's
are
been a
a
horrible
loss
day.
already. So
I think I'm
you're
0 for.
UTSA. They're road runners, man. Tell us about that, Jake.
I thought that the rowdy crowd of UTSA would be the one that kind of willed them to victory over here. And I guess all 300 fans decided to not get loud for the game because it was very, very dead. But I thought that them at home was actually going to be a beneficial because I thought that these were 2 even teams and wanted to give a little bit there. But again, I came away really impressed with how DBU played this series. I mean, they really kind of dominated UTSA in every facet of the game in both games.
Yeah, Noah, DBU, they're playing their way into a 16 seed, right?
Yep, this is an easy pick. DBU's hot. I think UTSA is faltering just a little bit. I don't think they're a top 25 team, whereas DBU is trying to prove it and do as much as they can, kind of like Campbell is right now, trying to kind of take that leap to the next level. DBU wants to be a top 16 team badly.
Yeah, DBU really wants to host, and I think that they still have that chance if they keep winning games like this. Winning both games last night. They have to win. They just played today, right, Jake?
Allegedly. I think that we're looking at a Sunday because UIW did a doubleheader yesterday and a Sunday, so I think that that's what UTSA is probably going to do again.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I was trying to find out if they played today or Sunday for graduation stuff. There's a lot of graduations going on across the country, and so that's why a lot of these games got played in doubleheaders and moved up. But it's good to see DBU winning that and playing their way into a 16 seed. They're trying to host a regional, and if you're going to pick a team out of Texas, it's got to be DBU right now. All right, Noah, you knew that AJ was going to take his Gamecocks. You went with them. Is there still time? Is there still hope here for this Gamecock team to take back over and win 2 against Arkansas here?
There is still hope, but it's going to be tough in that Baumwalker environment, and Arkansas just seems to be doing every little thing right now. Ever since that sweep against Georgia, they've been on fire. South Carolina is just kind of clicking the wrong buttons right now. It's very, very strange. I know last season we were kind of talking about if Mark Kingston doesn't have even just an upper average year where they sneak into the tournament, he's probably done at South Carolina, and he's obviously well overperformed this year. The roster might not be a surprise, but just from a coaching standpoint. But now we're seeing this team where we're seeing that downside of what could have been, and hopefully they can kind of figure it out here. But Bob Walker is not an easy place to figure your season out at.
No, when you're going in there and you're saying, hey, we need to turn the ship, well, that's a tough spot. There's not a lot of mooring docks there for you to figure this one out. There's not a lot of patience there either. It's been tough in the SEC slate here down the stretch here for South Carolina. Arkansas just seems to be taking care of business, though, right, Jake?
Yeah, and I know as much as I've kind of dogged on South Carolina, I don't think that this is South Carolina being bad as much as Arkansas kind of going out, handling their business. And again, very Arkansas type win. They kind of just always get the big hit when they seem to need it. And they really don't even outplay their opponents. They just kind of end up winning it at the end of the game. But I think that South Carolina at four in a row in the SEC, if they kind of get swept here, that'll be interesting to see how their tournament conversation happens. Because, again, you really don't want to be trying to find wins against Tennessee as they're kind of desperate as well.
Yeah, I said this at the Monday show that we did. I said whoever wins this series finds themselves locked into a national seed. Whoever wins this series is definitely the national lock. Arkansas, to me, feels like a top 5 team lock right now. They feel like the team that's going to host. They feel like everything's going to go through Fayetteville. The road is there for the Omahogs again, copyrighted from somebody. But
I think there's a path to Arkansas potentially being the number 1 overall seed heading into the tournament. I think they're playing that well right now, where Wake Forest maybe slips up a little bit in the ACC tournament, and Arkansas goes and wins that SEC tournament. There's a small chance out there where we're talking about Arkansas really having that number 1 next to their name, which I know Arkansas fans would not sign up for that right now.
Don't say that for Arkansas fans. Do not say that out loud. All of our Arkansas fans, please close your ears. Don't listen to Noah. You're a 4 seed or a 3 seed. Just be happy with that. We like that national seeding. We don't want you to be the 1 seed. That's just a bad curse moving forward here. So no, there is a path though. No, I think you're right. I think that they could do it if they win the SEC title and Wake loses that ACC title. But Arkansas playing very good baseball right now. I like them to win one of the next two here this weekend at least.
I mean, they've only lost one SEC game period at home, by the way. Someone pointed that out to me last night.
Yeah.
I hadn't believed that they were as good as they are.
Noah, you stand alone and you're victorious last night. You finally pick against your Sun Devils. Was this like a reverse psychology thing, hoping like you're a win-win situation?
No, I'm going all in on my 7 Pac-12 teams in the tournament. We needed this one for that. My Sun Devils know that they can afford to lose a series if it means the greater good for the conference, and they are willing to go ahead and do that for us. Very nice. I am worried about the Classic, Arizona State coming back and winning the series 2-1, but the Trojans, big win for them last night, and they looked pretty good while doing it.
A young Trojan team really playing pretty good ball a little bit earlier than expected. This team was expected to be better next year, kind of like how UCLA got a little bit ahead of themselves last year. This USC team seems to be playing very good for a young ball club. Jake, you took Arizona State. I did as well. I'll let you go first here, and then I'll speak my points.
I still think we have a Mark special brewing, Noah, where they lose Friday and then come out and win the next two. But again, I came away very impressed with USC because it kind of seemed like they'd been going the wrong way. And Arizona State really has been kind of that middle range of Pac-12 upper. And again, to go out and get a win like this, I mean, USC is going to need these type of wins going forward. And for their freshmen, I mean, this is a great win to kind of build off of.
Yep, Arizona State still could win the next two. They have the offensive firepower, but being shut down last night by Blake Sutterson, very good for USC. Big win for them. Big win for the conference if you're talking about 7 teams getting in there. But I still think Arizona State could win the next two. All right, was that our last one? That was it? We just picked 7 this week?
Well, yeah, because you didn't want to pick St. Louis Davidson.
Okay, I'll let you get into it right now. Jake, what is the mid-major series or series this weekend that have big impacts on the field of 64 and some bid stealing going on?
From a bid stealing standpoint, we have DBU. I think that they're kind of locked in. So any team that wins Conference USA. ECU is another one that if anybody other than ECU wins, that's a bid stealer. Campbell as well. And then as terms as obscure conferences that no one really cares about, Harvard and Penn have pretty much locked in. So one of those two teams is going to be in as they play a 3-game series. From the Southland concert, UIW and Nichols both play the same 2 teams. So whoever has the better record is they're both tied. And then Davidson and St. Louis 1-2. Those will likely be the A-10 team as well that we see.
So we got a lot of action going on this weekend that's going to cause some drama here in the 64-team bracket. And there's a lot of teams on the bubble that do not want to see bid stealing. So they want to see these teams take care of business. The higher-rated teams win this weekend. Dallas Baptist beating UTSA, but I think both those teams are probably in the bracket already, so we don't really need to get into that one too much there. Good work there, Jake. I like where we're going here. We'll kind of go back to you with that same question next week and maybe some other ones here so we can get into that because we want to keep knowing who's on that bubble there for the 64 and stealing some bids. Noah, what's the path look like for Kentucky now? They dropped the opener to Tennessee. People are screaming because they were number 1 on the RPI that they should be a national seed. I know you and I did not agree with that at all. 5 games left. If they lose both series, do they find themselves as a top 8? I don't believe so. Do they find themselves as a top 16 is a better question. And are they a national seed if they win the next 5?
I don't see any path outside of almost winning out, and then definitely winning the SEC tournament for Kentucky to be a top 8 seed. I know you guys were talking about that in the Twitter space this week, and I was sitting there eating dinner, and I was like, I can't chime in right now because there's food in my mouth, but I want to scream that Kentucky has almost no path to a top 8 seed because you have to think about who else is going to be in that conversation. We talk about teams like LSU, Wake Forest, Vanderbilt, Florida, Stanford. Those spots are all pretty much guaranteed. I didn't even mention Arkansas. So now all of a sudden we feel like maybe 2 openings, and I don't think Kentucky is in that conversation right now. And I'm sure I'm overlooking somebody like a Coastal Carolina, a Campbell, that we would probably feel better about putting them in that spot. I just don't see it with this Kentucky team. I don't even necessarily see them as a top 16 team, but I think they do have that path to get there, doing well to close out the season. I think they have to take at least one of these 2 series and do pretty well in the SEC tournament to kind of be in there. That number 1 RPI is really, really going to help them, but I don't know how much it's going to be able to help them because they just don't pass a lot of tests for me.
Yeah, they don't pass the eye test for me. Every time I watch them play, I'm just really not impressed with how they play baseball. Yeah, they've won some games. They're number 1 in the RPI. Good for them. But this series here against Tennessee and then next week against Florida, I feel like if they only win one game here down the stretch, that's going to hurt them being a 16 seed even. And then moving into the tournament, they're going to have to do something in the SEC tournament. They're going to have to win some games, I think, to move forward and really put themselves into that chance there. A lot of people are screaming that they should be an 8 seed. I don't believe they should be. I don't believe that they're a 16 seed, but if they can take care of business and win one of these two series, sure, give them one of the regional hosts, okay, because that means that they beat a very good SEC team to get there. All right, Jake, who needs wins this weekend the most? We got about 5 minutes left here. Let's discuss a little bit who needs wins this weekend the most.
I would say in a school that we haven't talked about today is TCU. I mean, they have Baylor this weekend. They need every single game that they can get down the stretch, and they have a very winnable series in front of them. And I think if they drop this series, they're pretty much out of the tournament, barring them going and winning the Big 12. So I think that this is a very winnable, easy series for them. But at the same time, this is a very pressure-filled series because this is kind of their bubble shrinking.
Yeah, this TCU team now is 28-21. They're 9-10 in Big 12 play, which is just not really good. They're sitting right now at number 7 in the Big 12, just above Kansas and Baylor. This team does not seem to be playing the right direction right now, and they're really bad on the road. But they need to win these games here against Baylor. Noah?
Yeah, I had a couple teams on my list, and TCU was one of them. Then I was thinking Florida could use a few wins. South Carolina could use a few wins for that top 8, kind of top 16 conversation. But then getting into the tournament is, of course, it all boils down to Louisville. We were just talking about them, how the bubble in the ACC is so weird. One week you could be a top 25 team. The next week you could be outside of the tournament. We're seeing kind of the opposite of that with North Carolina. And now Louisville is just completely falling apart at the wrong time. And now they're not in the ACC tournament. That's the third time we've said that this show, so I think that they are the obvious answer, that Louisville has to at least take one against Virginia and then really, really go on the offensive to kind of try and get back into the conversation here, because it is completely fallen off the rails quickly.
Yeah, they have fallen apart very fast, and it's been kind of scary there. The teams that I'm going to say are some bubble teams here. Texas A&M and Auburn. Now, I think that they've both kind of played their way into it, but they needed wins this weekend really to prove that they both belong in that tournament there. Beating teams like Alabama and Ole Miss, really putting it together and saying, hey, we belong in this tournament. We belong in the 64-team tournament. Another team that I really thought for a chance of winning host spot was Oregon State. Really had to go down and take care of business against UCLA. Losing that first one, I think it kind of puts Oregon State solidly as a number 2. No matter what happens the rest of their season, I feel like they're a 2 seed at this point. I don't see a way for them to host unless they win the Pac-12 tournament. That would be the only way that they could get into the top 16 again. So this weekend, I really felt like Oregon State needed to win that one. USC and Washington, 2 big wins also for helping their cause this weekend, forcing them to really, the community to really look at this Pac-12. And like Noah said, there are 7 deserving teams out there. Now, whether 7 teams get in, I think a lot of that's going to have to do with these bubble teams that Jake was talking about earlier. So any last words here before we go, guys? Noah?
Just excited to see Rocky Top keep it rolling against a bad Kentucky team. Let's keep that energy rolling. Jake, I know you got a lot of your teams. Which ones are you most focused on this weekend? Because it feels like last year you had like 16 teams, whereas this year you're down to like 2 or 3.
Well, they keep playing bad. Like you can't really be a Tulane fan this year when they've only won 9 games. I'm really excited to see Texas because they lost game 1 and then absolutely throttled San Jose State. But I think that they need to take care of business, and they're a lot closer to the bubble than I think people kind of realize. And if they drop a series at San Jose State, the way the Big 12 is, I think Kansas State's kind of in danger of stealing Texas's spot at the table.
I'm with you. I'm waiting to see that Texas-West Virginia series next week, and I think that's a big one for both teams. West Virginia more of their seeding, and Texas more to see if they get into the tournament. So there's some big baseball here the next 2 weeks right before conference tournament play. All right, guys. Thanks for joining us again here on the Weekend Rotation again. Go on Home Field Apparel, code CBC15, get 15% off your first order there. Great stuff. I know Jake's rocking some. What do we got on today? We got Texas State. What's the shirt?
Florida State. Sorry, wrong one. Florida State. So Chief Osceola planting the spear.
Wow, Florida State. Okay. All right. Noah, Jake, myself, thanks for joining us again here on the Weekend Rotation. We'll see you again next weekend. We're going to be doing Spaces on Monday again. Gonna jump back into Spaces and talk baseball. So come join us.